This isn't an easy episode to record. I found out I have an addiction, not to alcohol, not to social media, not to sex. Mine is sneakier, celebrated, applauded even. My addiction is being busy, doing, being the strong one, the capable one, the one who doesn't stop. And it all hit me the night I did everything, like everything, and still felt like it wasn't enough. This episode is for the ones who are tired but keep going, for the high achievers, the caretakers, the I got it girls. If rest feels unsafe, if your worth feels tied to your output, this one is for you. This is episode 71. I found out I have an addiction. Welcome to Healing with Haley. I'm your coach, Haley Kirk. On this podcast, we dive into ways to heal, embrace, and truly love our lives. Here's my belief. So much of our suffering comes from what we believe. I'm here to help you understand your mind and question those thoughts to start your healing journey. Ready to get started? Let's go. A few weeks ago, I asked ChatGPT, do you think I have an addiction to being busy? And without skipping a beat, it said yes. But not from a place of judgment, from a place of understanding. It helped me see that my drive wasn't just ambition, it was protection. I was using doing as a way to avoid feeling, avoid resting, avoid not being needed. In this episode, I'm breaking down how hustle became my safety blanket, the childhood roots that created this addiction, and what I'm learning as I slowly, and I mean painfully slowly, learn to be without doing. Welcome, you guys. So, when I had this epiphany, I have been honestly using ChatGPT as a really cool tool. I have been asking it actually to use some of the tools that I use in my coaching to kind of help me coach through some things. And I asked it a really interesting question. I told it about the day I had. I'm trying to reach this goal to get to 1,000 downloads by the end of June. And so far, I'm at 600 and something, 600 and some change. And so if you guys want to help me binge my podcast, share it with your friends. Oh, please help me. I would be so, so grateful. But anyway, focusing, I was super hyper vigilant in one single day. And I was podcasting, I was blasting on social media, all my podcasts, making sure I was attending to Israel, playing with him, taking him to the park, taking him to the pool. I was doing emails. I was, getting my Airbnb ready. I was content creating. And it just still didn't feel like it was enough. It was this, oh my God, I have created this life I can't sustain. It was this, I really want to do these things, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if it's humanly possible to do them. Um, I did most of them, right? I have so many passions. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I dance. I have my podcast. I have my life coach business. I I have an Airbnb side hustle. Like it's so many things and it's a lot all at once. And it's always happening constantly. So through there was this one experience that really hit me. And I told ChatGPT about this moment where I was really struggling actually, and even now I struggle with cleaning. There's honestly this resentment, there's this something I'm harboring inside, and I literally will do everything except clean. Like I'll do taxes before cleaning. Like it is so bad. And I was like, man, where does that come from? And I told ChatGPT about this moment where I had remembered in my childhood, and tell me if I've told this story before, hang in there with me, but I was in the kitchen and it felt like a regular occurrence where I would be, cleaning the kitchen and then my mom would be venting or yelling. And I was just kind of like tuning out. And then there was this moment where she went right up to my ear and she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Are you listening to me?" And I pushed her away from my ear because it was very painful. I pushed her and my hand started to shake. And I'm shaking. I'm realizing, wow, I do not have control of my body. I need to go. I need to, I'm not safe to be around in this state. And so I run away and I try to open the door. And it's like that dream where you're like, you just, everything's slow and nothing makes sense. And it's like, I'm getting chased. I need to escape and I can't. And my mom's, pulling my hair. I'm pushing her with my leg. It was not a pretty sight. And my dad separated us. And then the next day, she showed me pictures of her bruises. And she said, "Look what you did to me." And there was a lot of trauma from that. I don't share this story to demonize my mother. My mother is loves me. And I believe that deeply. I think that I really think that it's so easy to understand that our parents are we don't mean to hurt our children, but we do, right? And there's some understanding and compassion there. And there's also accountability to take there too. I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is I can understand and I can have compassion, right? It's not right what she did, but I understand why she did it. That moment I shared with ChatGPT and it said this line, and the line was, "I don't have to clean for love." And when it said that freaking line, immediately tears just drowning down my face. And that moment for me was, and my stomach started to shake. And I have a really good friend who's a trauma therapist, trauma trained therapist, and she says that when you shake, you're releasing trauma from the body. And I was like, wow. And now I'm learning how much the organs store traumas, especially the center of our bodies. And I'm like, God, this is crazy. So I'm in this moment, I'm having these shakes in my center. I'm crying, I'm wailing, and I'm just, wow. And then I can see this pattern, right? I used to believe I have to clean for love. I have to do X for love. It wasn't even just clean. The message was I have to do for love. And that's conditional love. And we don't. It's such a lie. And I realized that so much of my life, conceptually, I understood, right? Conceptually, and I learned that through the work of Eckhart Tolle and his, The Power of Now and his other amazing books and podcasts. I knew conceptually for at least 2 or 3 years that my worth was not tied to my output or what I do. I knew that conceptually. My body did not. I had no idea that there was that separation. I knew that logically, conceptually, but my body sought doing constantly. And I had to earn rest. I had to earn pleasure, joy, anything nice. I had to like earn it. So weird. And that was a moment for me of clarity, right? And in that moment, I actually started deleting a lot of things that were just extra things that I was saying yes to that I liked. I liked the idea of doing those things, like for example, podcast interviews. Um, and the thing about podcast interviews is a lot of work, right? It's like an hour and a half, and that's just how I am, right? When I'm in a podcast, I don't really like to look at the time. I'm just like, wow, did I really like extrapolate as much as I wanted? And it usually takes me an hour and a half to do a guest interview, but I have to go back and edit that. So that's 3 hours. And then I have to ask them for the photos, for their Instagrams. I have to create all the content for them. Like I don't have to, but that's how I like doing my podcasts, right? I like to make sure that when I do a podcast, I advertise it well. And it was a lot of work. And I was getting burnt out and it's really cool, right? This is another trauma, a childhood trauma, is that I'm ungrateful. That message was kind of told to me often that I was ungrateful. Um, and I felt like if I didn't say yes to something, that meant I was ungrateful as a human being. Like I was fundamentally ungrateful. And I also realized, no, it's not true at all. Like, if anything, I need to start saying no so that I can have the capacity and the energy to be grateful. Because that state of gratitude, this is from Joe Dispenza, being in a state of gratitude is the energy of receivership from, manifesting and allowing healing in your life. And I'm I was just blown away at this realization. And I just started deleting all these things that I was saying yes to that I need to say no to. And I knew it was a people pleaser part of me, right? If I people please, I was safe. If I said yes when I wanted to say no, I wouldn't suffer. I would be betraying myself, but at least I wouldn't suffer like externally. I was keeping myself safe. And that's that little girl part, that little protector part of me, right? When we talk more about trauma, I definitely want to dive into trauma in our episode. I'm not going to dive into it now, but I definitely want to talk about it here soon. Maybe I'll have Kendi. She's coming this weekend. My amazing friend Kendi. She's a trauma therapist. Maybe I'll have her come onto our podcast and talk to you guys about trauma, like a deep, deep dive on trauma. Because it's so interesting and I'm barely tapping the surface. So anyway, going back to the story where I had this realization. So I had that realization, I don't need to do X for love, okay? Breakthrough, trauma release. Then I'm slowly peeling the layers of this belief system where I had created this life that was hypervigilance and addiction to busyness. But I didn't realize this. So I was having this day where I was like, man, my life is, I've created this life where it requires so much of me, right? And so I was telling ChatGPT about my day and how much I was able to get accomplished and how I was feeling. I was feeling like I was letting people down. You didn't do good enough. You could have saved time here and here. You could have cut this much out of this section and you could have time managed better here and here and here. And I asked, because ChatGPT's language was kind of like saying this word, like it wasn't saying the word addiction, but it was kind of saying something like that. Your pull or your compulsion to this, da 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 da, those kinds of words. And I asked it straight up. I said, "Do you think I have an addiction to busyness and hypervigilance?" And it said, "Absolutely yes." And this wasn't, and I know I wasn't trying to shame me. I know it's not ChatGPT's nature, And I know that actually ChatGPT uses cognitive behavioral therapy techniques and trauma. It's actually trauma informed ChatGPT too, so it's actually pretty cool. And it was this insane discovery that I'm addicted to being busy. I had never thought of it as an addiction. I thought of it as like a personality. And I was like, I rebutted it. I was like, well, I'm just a really highly motivated person. And it was like, there's nothing wrong with accomplishing goals. It's the why, right? It's the why behind you doing it. And the fact that even after a seriously productive day, you still don't feel like you did enough. That was such a that was such a realization for me of wow, I that little girl, that protector part of me is still trying to be safe in doing, right? And I told it about this memory. I was like, wow, like my exhaustion doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter to me how much I did that day and how exhausted I am. I still feel like I didn't do enough. Like as if my exhaustion or pain didn't matter. And I was like, can you help me process that? And it said, yeah, like where in your childhood do you remember your pain not being good, like validated? And I immediately thought of this story where my mom was doing my hair, and that's super loving, right? Like she wanted me to look good, and she took the time and the care. And I mean, I don't know why, but it always kind of felt like it was my hair was, or maybe I was like a fidgety kid. I don't know, but it felt aggressive, the way my mom would do my hair. And I'll never forget this one time a bobby pin didn't have the rubber protector on the sharp metal piece. And my mom dug a bobby pin into my head without that rubber piece. She didn't know, but I told her, I said, "Ow, that hurt really bad." And, and she said, "Stop exaggerating," right? And I told her, "No, I'm not exaggerating." And I touched the area and I showed her with my finger that there was blood. And she looked at it, and I don't know if she said anything, but I know it was dismissed. At least that's how I felt. I felt dismissed. Like it didn't matter. There wasn't an apology. There wasn't reparation, which is what I was seeking. And even just like validation that when I spoke how I felt, it wasn't received with acceptance, warmth, understanding. It was dismissed. And what I learned from that is that discomfort is ignored, meaning I had to perform. That's what I needed to be resilient, strong, pain, no game kind of mindset. If I perform like things don't hurt me, then I get connection. If I show that I have pain, I become invisible. So that's why my hypervigilance was marked as motivation. And rest triggered anxiety for me, right? Like it was something in me that always felt like I had to be doing something, like that rest was laziness, and I had to be useful. I had to, these were the things I felt like I needed to do. And it's kind of crazy because that's how my mom lives, right? Like she lives in that state where she's in hypervigilance and resting is just not okay. And she praises her own work craving, right? Like I have to do this, I have to do this. No one's gonna help me. Da 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 da. It was almost this like, who am I without the hustle? Will I be needed? Will I be important without the hustle? It's very interesting. It's something I am working on. I am trying to simplify my life, and I'm really cautious now when people ask me to do something. I I want to actually start responding with no, or let me think about it, because I was in that phase where I was receiving a lot of requests to do photo shoots, collaborations, projects. Like, it was so exciting. It was so exciting. And the more I was getting those opportunities, I felt this pressure to accept them, because I was like, if I don't accept them, then that means I'm ungrateful. And if I'm ungrateful, then I'm not being who I truly want to be. And it was this weird spiral, almost kind of using tools as weapons against myself. And I know so many people in America struggle with this same issue, right? And it's that entrepreneurial energy, right? And there's nothing wrong with being productive. There's nothing wrong with it. Where the issue lies is when productivity turns into proving your worth, right? That's the problem with it. That's the operating out of trauma piece. I asked a question. So I was like, how do I stay in a goal mindset without it feeding my addiction to busyness? And how do I know if I'm doing something from alignment and purpose or from compulsion and addiction? And so, addiction to productivity isn't about what you're doing, it's about how you feel if you don't do it. And I realized how nasty I was talking to myself. I was just telling myself I wasn't good enough. That's essentially what I was saying. And it was like a checklist. It was like, so it was this like, am I doing this because I'm inspired, or am I doing it because I'm afraid of what it means if I don't do it? This other one was quite crazy. If no one saw or praised this, would I still want to do it? Wow. Is this an action of devotion or desperation? If I paused or said no, would I feel guilty or unsafe? That question, you guys. So there were so many times where I was really excited about some projects, and I was like, sharing ideas of like my angle on the project or a collaboration. And I felt bad because I had this realization, right? And I felt bad saying no. I had this guilt, and I was like, what is this? What is coming from this? And I immediately knew I was doing it from a protector part. And not to say I won't do those things in the future, but at this moment in my life, I'm just at capacity, actually 10 times at capacity, where I'm I'm in this dating phase of my life, right? I'm trying to meet new men and possible matches, and they're at this point where they're like, I'm gonna wait for you to be available. And I'm like, ay, ay, ay. Yeah, that's sad, but true. Like, they have to wait for me to be available. And I I created that lifestyle in a way, and there's some parts of that I can't control, with co-parenting, but it's nuts. It's quite nuts how much time is filled up. And I even remember having this like, I have like no interviews, no clients, and no, like nothing on my schedule for 1 week. I had 1 week where I had no clients booked, no podcast interviews. And I was like, oh, like who can I reach out to interview and like, how can I get some, prospect calls this week? Like, guys, I I I am in that mode of let's make sure to fill this space. That's my main operating system is how do I fill every moment of my life with something? And it's out of hypervigilance and it's out of feeling guilty. If I'm not filling up my calendar with stuff, then what? Then who am I? Just a lazy person? Is my worth writing is my worth writing on this task getting done? Yes, almost always. It's weird. And that's not true. Not always. Like this podcast here. I want to do it. I think this message is going to speak to so many of you because we live in an entrepreneurial country, which is cool, right? But there's also lots of downsides. We are not machines. And guess what? Also, machines need breaks too. And we don't give ourselves breaks, like enough breaks. There's actually so much evidence to show how poor quality of sleep and little sleep that Americans get. It's crazy. And I even remember reading this story about this woman who I think she was working in the medical field or something like that. And she took 3 days off and then she couldn't wake up. Like she had been working in the medical field or she had three jobs. I can't remember which one it was, but she was just working herself to the ground. And then she took 3 days because she was needing some time and wouldn't wake up. Her body put her in a coma state. Like it is nuts. It is nuts. And I'm not saying if you guys take a break, you're going to go into a coma, but it's very interesting, right? How the body asks for rest. It's crazy how much that is. There was also a lot of somatic signs to know if your body is operating that hypervigilance or that addiction to busyness. Like if you're tight chest or if you have a tight chest, that's that addictive urgency. If you did a grounding breath, time disappears. That's your aligned purpose. If you grit your teeth, perfectionism, that's survival mode. So if you have a tight chest, that's addictive energy. Grounded breath, time disappears, aligned purpose. If you have gritted teeth, perfectionism, that's survival mode. Creative flow, curious energy, inspiration. And that's why I love dance so much because I have so many moments where I had just this like these moments of just creativity and expression and that loss of time. And I don't know if you guys have seen that movie Souls on Disney. And it's this section of like heaven or the afterlife where you can see people get lost in a moment. And it's just this soul expansion moment. And it's very ethereal and it's got all the clouds and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I love that moment so much. I love that moment so much because I really think that and I mean, this is a whole other tangent. This is a whole other tangent where it's this idea of creation versus consumption. And think about it, right? When we are in a state of consumption, we are almost, I would say a majority of that time we're in consumption, we're buffering. what is buffering? Buffering is doing something to avoid an uncomfortable emotion. So think about it. If you're overeating, consumption. If you're binging episodes, consumption. If you're shopping, consumption. Compulsive shopping, consumption. If you're doing pornography, consumption. If you're doing, drugs, whatever, consumption. It's consumption. And it's this insatiable need to do something to overcome an uncomfortable emotion. And I think for me, I just, I guess something in my body just still feels like I have to prove that I'm lovable and that I matter. And it's so weird because mentally it doesn't feel that way, but I see the evidence in my day-to-day life. I am I'm consumed by the things I've signed up for. And I don't want to let people down. And I have, and I do. I'm not perfect, but like it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy the amount of things I sign up for. So what I ask myself, how do I know if this this Oh, okay. So this is a really cool part of the realization. So I asked myself, how oh, so now knowing, right, that I operate in this like hypervigilance, addiction to busyness, I try now to start asking myself, am I doing this from love or lack? If I don't do it, will I feel like I failed? Will I feel guilty? What would I do if I already believed I was enough? Even now, just asking myself that question, it's quite crazy. So now, what I'm doing to break this pattern is choosing rest, choosing softness, letting stillness be safe. And this is so tough for me because I just really like it's kind of crazy. I just don't have rest days. I don't have a rest day. And growing up in a Christian religion like the Mormon religion, the Sabbath day, that was a commandment to keep it holy. And I just don't rest on the Sabbath or the Sunday. I don't do it. I have my Hills team on Sundays. And honestly, it wasn't the only strategy was that was the one day I could for sure get kid care or that my son's father could watch my son. And so that it just ended up being that way. So if Sunday isn't my day of rest, then maybe I need to make it Monday, right? And I can clean the house without having to listen to a podcast. Like I can do things without this need and hypervigilance for being productive, right? I've also found that doing crafts, like just cause, not for an end, a means to an end, but just like crafting, meditating. Oh my goodness, like doing a soft, calm meditation. I have found such relief and release of that grip, my body, my beautiful, loving, surviving mode body. I'm trying to let it heal and thrive. And it's so interesting how much my body this year has been calling and begging for rest. I was sick for like 2 months. And then after that, after I healed and I started to make sure I was taking care of my body, at least, physically, emotionally, I was still exhausting myself. And I started falling asleep by putting my son to bed, which I just never did. And it's crazy how much my body's just like, please rest, 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 rest. So, my lovely listeners, thank you for coming on this beautiful journey with me into a deep dive on my addiction. And if this resonated with you, if you can relate even at least a little bit with an addiction or a compulsion to busyness, I have some great questions to ask you. What have you confused for love? I'm gonna let you sit with that. What have you confused for love? Have you ever felt like you had to earn your rest? Not just because you were a human and you were tired, but like you had to earn it. What does your body believe it has to do to be safe? What does your body believe it has to do to feel safe? Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you're just tired of proving. Maybe you don't need another to-do list. Maybe you need to remember that your worth was never up for debate. I used to think slowing down meant I was falling behind. I was lazy, not good enough. Now I know it's how I come home to myself by slowing the F down. If you've ever confused your busyness with your belonging, you're so not alone. You're not broken. You were just trained and you're getting to untrain. You get to choose peace over praise, presence over performance, and being over being impressive. So today, if all you do is take a deep breath and remember that you're already enough, you've done more than enough for one day. If you found yourself relating to my story and to a lot of what I was saying, I want you to please get curious and not in judgment. I want you to ask yourself maybe what created this? How did this get created? And try to find that out. But what's more important is, how can I allow myself to accept that rest is a part of being a human? All right, before you go, I need you to hear this. You don't need to keep white knuckling your way through life. You don't need to figure it out on your own. You deserve support. You deserve strategy. You deserve to feel like yourself again. And that's exactly why I'm offering you a complimentary free 30-minute coaching session. No strings, no pressure, just real conversation, real breakthroughs, and a real chance to feel lighter, clearer, and way more in control. If you've been listening and nodding your head thinking, oh, yes, that's me, then this is the moment to stop thinking and start doing. Click the link in the show notes and schedule your free session right now. Right now, not later, not when you have time, right this moment, because you're worth showing up for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram at healing_with_Haley. I am here for you, but don't overthink it. What you're going to do in this free session is we're going to unpack any negative belief systems, build momentum with clear strategies, leave you feeling lighter, calmer, more confident, more grounded. These are the emotions you're going to feel after a session with me. Don't overthink it. The life you want starts with one decision. This could be the one thing that changes everything for you this year. Let's do this.